Hi, and welcome to the Take the Stage podcast. I'm your host, Alexis Savraz, and I'm on a mission to help make diversity more of a reality for lower middle market and middle market investment firms. Take the Stage celebrates and amplifies diverse voices and serves as a platform for conversations that encompass a wide range of perspectives. You're going to hear candid conversations that touch on career paths, the not so linear kind, valuable insights, practical advice, and honest stories on navigating and succeeding on the buy side. Today on Take the Stage and our special series, Ladies Who Rock, we shine the spotlight on Maria de Palacio, Head of Finance and Operations at GAWA Capital, the largest impact fund manager in Spain that is focused on providing market-based solutions to key societal issues. In this episode, we discuss how impact investing is evolving beyond ESG, why financial returns and measurable impact can and should go hand in hand, why Europe has an opportunity to take the lead in impact investing as global policies shift, the power of women-led communities in finance and how these networks are helping more women break into investing, what the future of impact investing looks like and how professionals can get involved, and more. Today, we are joined by Maria de Palacio. So Maria, welcome. Why don't you start by just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your career and whatever you'd like to share with us.
Sure. Well, first of all, I currently work in GAWA Capital, which is impact investing manager that's focused on investing in Latin America and Asia, part in Africa as well. And we are focused on areas and geographies where the most vulnerable communities are living. And our aim is to impact those communities in order to make them thrive and be able to get out of poverty fundamentally. And before joining GAWA Capital, I was previously working on the CNMV, which was the regulator, financial regulator in Spain. And previously to that, I worked in consultancy. So during all my career, I had been very interested in social responsible investing. And then I figured out that there was this impact investing, which is like a step forward to social investing. And thanks to a call I got from GAWA, which is, well, one of the CEOs, I started learning about what they were doing, and I was really moved by their project. And I decided that from investor protection, which was what I was working on in the CNMV, and moving to impact investing was quite an interesting and really moving from the. I was really interested in changing to this kind of investing, which I believe is quite beautiful in terms of objectives. So I've been here for the last nearly 5 years already. And we're growing a lot right now because we're launching a new fund which is also focused not only on social impact but also on environmental impact.
Okay, so you just mentioned two things, so social and environmental. So I think before we get into like a deeper conversation, let's first dive into what actually is impact investing and what that means. So break it down for us a little bit.
Okay. For people who maybe don't understand a lot about what we do in impact investing, the main intention of impact investing is to make what we usually talk in finance, which is the risk return figures. We add to that the impact, which means that we are not only looking for a financial return for the shareholders, but also for an impact in the communities and the society, which can be either social or environmental, or maybe both. And we have specific KPIs which are measured, and throughout the year you also have to manage the portfolio to see how those impact figures are being reached.
Okay, perfect. So now, like, what I'd like to do is really understand how you got from point A to point B. So talk to us a little bit in terms of what really inspired you to pursue this career in impact investing, because like you said, you started in consulting, you then pivoted and went into a more finance focused role, and then you decided to make the move into impact investing. So really, what was that defining moment for you, that or impetus for making that transition to this particular area of investing?
Well, in my case, I must say that it wasn't just like a very specific moment that can make the transition from one space to another. It was more gradual, because I had been really interested in social responsible investments, but also what we call in Spain RSC, like responsible corporate actions in businesses in general, and from a personal perspective as well. So I had been studying, and I had been going to many different forums and conferences, and I found out that was the way I wanted to transition in my professional life. But I was also finding out a bit from one space to another, and then I learned about GAWA Capital because of some of the conferences I went to, which was organized by one of the associations which are focused on social investments. And I found out that there was one of my current CEOs there. And after that, that was when I got that call, a moment in my life where I was not even searching for a job at that moment. And I was just invited to an interview, and we had lunch, and it was like really moving, because I learned about the project from the founders, and I was completely moved by it. And in fact, well, we can talk about that specific moment at that lunch, which was quite funny with my CEO. But I then realized that there was where I wanted to be.
It's always kind of like that, isn't it? You just kind of fall into the career. But I feel like I have this conversation often with candidates, and with many candidates, both women and men, where they feel pulled towards something. Were there any particular signals, right? Because I feel like especially with women, there's so much thought, and there's so much anchoring oftentimes when they are in their current roles, and there's hesitation to move. Do you feel that there was something really that was kind of pulling you? What was that sense of, like, I don't know if I'm explaining myself, but that sense of like that desire to really, because it's scary to make a switch, right? So like, what was it that was, really that kind of pushing factor for you to essentially leave, where you were before, and make that move to GAWA?
Well, I learned from one of my CEOs a term that I had not heard about or used, but I've been using it a lot since, which is synchronicities. Sometimes in life, you just realize that, I don't know why, but things just start to find out a way to make you feel like things are taking you on that path. And I just realized, like, I had been studying a lot and getting to know a lot of people around this area, and I had just paused that search because I was, for personal and professional reasons, I was very happy in what I was doing, but I was always like with that on my mind. And then suddenly, with the certain specific personal situations that I was living at that time, I just got those calls, and then suddenly someone else from some other impact investing company that I met by a synchronicity as well. And then suddenly you see like, all around you is telling you like, this is the way, you know, it's like, I don't know.
The universe is telling
People
you.
call it the universe, others people.
Serendipity.
Yeah.
Right? Others call it
I think so.
serendipity. Yeah.
And then when you let yourself like just listen, with no judgment sometimes, and just like, why is this happening? Like, maybe I should give it a try. You lose that fear, you know, that you were mentioned. It's like things are gonna work. Yeah.
And at what point did you feel? At what point did that fear leave you?
At what point? I think when I let myself, just in one of the interviews that I had, it was like we turned out the interview to a personal conversation where we started like laughing and talking about, I don't know, sports, ski and whatever, and then you feel so comfortable that you see like,
you start to picture yourself.
Yeah, you picture yourself there, like with those people, working with them, and then when you say like, it's gonna work out.
I call that the power of familiarity. Because I use a framework in my work for recruitment, and it's called the PPI framework, and it stands for patience, purpose, and intention. And there's a roadmap in that particular framework, and it's basically how we can recruit, how we can use these very simple concepts that are patience, purpose, and intention to recruit more women or whatever kind of group we would like to bring to the organization. And along one of those stops along the way on my roadmap is what I call the power of familiarity. And that's basically when you bring potential candidates or contacts, right, that you are kind of nurturing, like, you know, that you think, oh, I would really like this person to be part of my team. I always say, or one of the steps is, you need to bring this person into the organization to expose them to the, you know, before they're hired. And as you're starting,
that too.
You know, you bring them into the organization to meet the team and to have that exposure. And it's a very powerful psychological moment, because it's kind of like you come in, right? And that person automatically starts to feel, oh, I like that guy. I'd like to be a colleague of, you know, so-and-so, or this is like this is a really great environment. This is like, this is the kind of team setting, right? And so you get them familiar with the culture, and you get them familiar with kind of the organization. And I call it the power of familiarity, because then they start to envision themselves as part of your team, as part of the organization.
And the other way around, because what we've done, we're a small team, and we've always had like something very clear in our minds. It's not only a CV or the experience you're searching for in a candidate, but also you need someone that really gets into the team and makes like the team, I mean, is part of the team. Like, that culture, that familiarity that you mentioned is super important. So one of the things that we do is not only interviewing the candidates in the area or department that they're going to work in and the CEOs, but also with the other team members, at least one or two of them, so that they can get together, see if they have that feeling, you know, like if you feel like that person can be part of the team. I think that's super important.
That's the next step in my roadmap. It's called the meet the parents concept.
Yes.
And it's like when you're starting to get more serious about a candidate, right? You bring them to meet the parents, right? In the sense, you're obviously not the parents, right? They're the management, right? But it's kind of the same thing. Like if we relate it to dating, right? You're going to, whenever you introduce someone to your family, right? Sometimes, a lot of the times, what will happen, and this can have an adverse effect, right? But it's kind of like, oh, this is a really nice family, or, you know, like, oh, this is, you know, like, I like this, you know, like, I like the mom, right? Or I like it, or the complete opposite, like, oh, this is terrible, I do not want to be a part of this, all right, you know? But it's called the meet the parents concept. So that's exactly kind of like,
yeah, I think it's a very good way to select a candidate. And the other way around, to the candidate to feel if they can fit in or not. Because sometimes you can have very nice interviews and then get into a business and an enterprise where then you find out that the rest of the team does not fit in the way you like or the way you work. And I think it's a very good idea to do so.
That's a separate episode that we'll have to get into. So we've gotten off track there a little bit. All right, so I want to change gears a little bit, and I want to talk about where kind of pick your brain in terms of what are some of the trends, or what do you see happening right now that in impact investing that are kind of shaping the space, and tell us about what you see maybe in Spain and abroad, or whatever you feel like you can really speak to.
Well, there are several things to take into account. I think that regulation has been one of the main issues in the last years and maybe decades in this area, because impact investing was something that was a bit out of regulation. We talked about ESG investing, which is something that's more in the liquid markets better, maybe. And impact investing was more focused on really like private equity fundamentally, but there is also elsewhere. So I found out that at that time you got like impact first, as we say, investors, which are really focused on really investing in a fund which is really focused on impact, and they can get part of the return as well, but they're like more interested in impact. But then there are other types of investment that have come together with regulation and trends in the market. And I feel like we always, recently talk about impact washing and greenwashing as well. And it feels like there's a bit of competence there because investors are not really informed about the differences, and regulation is going towards the ESG, but rather than impact. So I feel like right now, there's a moment like we have to focus on I think like not lecturing, but at least showing the investors what the difference is and what impact really gives as an extra effort rather than ESG. So I think there's a quite an important moment for this kind of investing right now, and I feel like it's growing as well as ESG. But there are certain political aspects that are taking certain, as we've seen as well in the space, not only in the US but also in Europe, that ESG is investing has been maybe politicized a bit, and at least us in the impact economy and impact investing, where we want to be really like focused on making that difference. So I think that's the main issue right now, to be able to thrive and continue growing.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that right now, so we've seen the pendulum swing very much so when it comes to impact investing, or the perceived perceptions of impact investing in the US, and there's obviously going to be significant changes and shifts with the current administration. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that this is an opportunity for, or I guess let me say it differently. Do you feel that Europe is in a place where they can really step up and become a leader in impact investing without the US behind it, or leading?
That's quite a tricky question.
A loaded question. That's a loaded question.
Yes, it is. I'm not really sure because I know that, as you mentioned, impact investing is, I mean, the US is one of the main players in every market, but in investing. And I think Europe has the opportunity to show that we are a leader as a geography itself in impact, and I really believe we can do it. But it's true that there's there's an aspect that has to be taken into account, which is politics and all the regulation that's associated with this. I think that it should take into account not only risks, because this is how regulation works. They have focus on risks. ESG risks have to be disclosed. There are a lot of requirements that have to be done. But if you don't focus on like pushing the positive impact, as we would say, further, there's a lot that is being blocked. And I guess that if regulation goes forward in that space, we can really lead on the impact investing sector.
Do you think that because admittedly this is not like an area that I, of course, command, but do you feel that between the heavy regulation and fragmented countries within the EU, it's possible to cohesively take the lead, or do you think that? Well, I guess that's the question. Do you feel that it's as Europe as a region, not necessarily from a particular country, would be able to do that given those constraints?
I think it does, because Europe works from a regulated perspective as a whole, because we have the European Commission, and in our sector there's ESMA, which is the financial regulator, and everything, it tends to having a common landscape on that. So I guess that if all the players in the market start to really push forward together on this, we could really lead on that. I think there's a really important aspect that I've seen personally in Spain, but I think that if we do it in Europe, it would be like, I think it could be a very good idea, is to push forward impact investing, generating community. I think that's the main difference in impact investing. And there is a global impact investing network which is present in the whole world, and we have many players from the US as well, and from other places. But the reality is that every year the forum is done in Europe, and if we lead from Europe in that aspect, I think we have a lot of opportunities there.
Okay, so there's opportunity.
I think so.
For Europe to step up.
I do think so, but that's a personal point of view. So
yeah.
Disclaimer.
So, what about because one of my favorite topics is women in these leadership opportunities, right? And the power that women in these groups can really have in kind of pushing agendas and things forward. What do you think in terms of, do you feel that well, I guess, tell me, the same question. So what are maybe some of the trends that you see among women coming into impact investing? Like, what have you seen so far?
Well, we've been just, it wasn't prepared, but we have just talked about community. And I think that there is a big trend there of women getting together, not only to know each other, but to learn from each other, and also to learn from the different businesses we're working in. And I think that is a good step, because I think we can make all our businesses thrive if we can push that community together. And on the other side, in the leadership roles, I think that in impact investing, we can see more and more women that are demonstrated not only on roles in their own businesses, but also worldwide, specialists in environmental issues and also social issues that are really stepping up as figures that are considered worldwide. In fact, we're on our on our business specifically, we've been seeing like different people who are going to be part of our investment committees that are all the women, and you can see them worldwide, and that's something that is really encouraging.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of stepping up, so you and I met through the Women in Impact Investing group.
Yes.
So I want you to maybe tell the audience a little bit about why you felt compelled to found part of this or co-found, this group, and tell us just a little bit about it in terms of objective, and we'll kind of, go from there.
Yeah, really. This Women on Impact Investing Network was, I feel it's one of the best things we did this last year. We got together with incredible women, amazing women who are in different areas and different businesses. And it was, Christiane Davidson, which is the founder, one of the co-founders. She reached out to several of us in our industry. She did it through my CEO. I didn't know her personally, but we went so well together since the first day. I remember that we sat for a coffee, and then we were talking about not even work. It was just traveling, and she's from Australia, and we were talking about sports and traveling in general. And then you get like familiarity, you mentioned at the beginning, and then that makes everything much more easier, because when you get on well with someone, all the ideas just come easily. And I was just totally convinced since the beginning. Like I think I'm into this. I think we can get all the women who are in this area together, and I think it helps all of us from a professional perspective, but also from a personal perspective, because we really create a community where we can get together, find out, like, even with issues regarding not only operational issues in the companies and regulation, as we mentioned, but also finding out candidates, or even with fundraising. We've been talking about this, like learning from each other in that way is incredible, and it's really.
Yeah, no, I agree. The first one that I went to, the one that I met you at, it was at the I can't remember the name of the law firm.
Yeah, the Abide.
It's a really long name, but it had more of a legal focus on it, right? We were talking about regulations and kind of EU, and we had someone from Germany who is kind of the most, I think, one of the more prominent lawyers in the space, right? Talking to this audience of just like fantastic women from all kind of walks of life, and I was one of them, and I have a very limited understanding of the laws that that relate to impact investing and ESG and etc. But it didn't even really matter that I didn't really know anything about the law or regulations, because it was just, like you said, that sense of community, that sense of just being part of a group, and being there for, the purpose of learning and growing and building relationships, and what I call building the tribe, right? So, connecting with others that are on the same wavelength as you. So, really kind of sharing those values of, we'd like to see more women in the space. We'd like to see more women in leadership roles. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we're there. Or that's part of the reason why we're there. And then, from there, it's been, I've met a fantastic group of women, and you're here today. And so the tribe builds. And so it's just a fantastic experience. And so I think that, going back to what I had originally asked, I think about in terms of, I don't even know if I asked this question in the end, like, what can women do? Like, what role can they do? And you said community. And I think that is, exactly like what women can do, is create and build and join communities, right? Because that's really, there's a lot of power in that. And I don't think I think, like female focused groups, it kind of land very differently than like groups that are, maybe all men or mixed. It's just a different dynamic.
Yeah, totally.
It's a very, very different dynamic. And it's not that it's necessarily better or one is worse. It's just that it's very, very different. And I think women tend to innately have that desire to help others.
Yes.
I mean, I think everyone individually has that intrinsic desire, right, to help others. I think that's just naturally built into human DNA. But I feel that women tend to, it just hits a little bit differently with women, right?
I think I would like to add a couple of things to that, because as you mentioned, the community and the women in impact investing, I think it was super welcoming. And when we're all women, I think it's not a matter of doing only women, men, or mix. I think everything is complementary. We can learn in both spaces, but there's a different, I don't know how to call it, but a different kind of vibe when you're there. And one of the things relating to what you mentioned on the parents
Meet the parents
meet the parents thing, I felt like women in that kind of space have like a sense of family. So you really, like, as I don't know if there's an expression in English for that, like you take your mask off and you're there and you show your vulnerability. How would you say that?
Yeah, vulnerability.
Much more than when you're surrounded by men. I don't know why, but it's something that naturally happens.
Yeah.
And so that makes relationships among women a bit more easy. I think it's something really interesting, because it makes all this community and relations among us easy, and we can help each other, and then we have that sense of community and family, and that also, all that you learn from that can be taken to your business environment, and then you bring all the women that can be. I brought some of my juniors as well, and then you talk about what we've learned with the whole team, and there's a lot that can be translated from what you learn on that area to your own business. So I think it's
I mean, I do think that there is a level of comfort. It's like kind of, in this particular group, it's kind of like being with your girlfriends. That's the sense that I get, right?
Yes.
Like, I feel like it's a sense, but we have to say that maybe not all groups are like that.
No,
right. And I've also heard women say the opposite, where, that they've felt that, they haven't felt helped by other women, and, that it's been maybe the opposite. That hasn't personally been my experience, but I do know I have, candidates that I've spoken with that have told me, like, like, I haven't, you would think that, with this woman in this firm, I would be supported more. And it's not always the case, but I would say, like, in the majority of the cases, when you have these types of groups, I think the purpose, and of course there's a million things that are going to go into a dynamic, right? But in this particular group, there's definitely that sense of being with girlfriends, and there's a sense of, like, let's help each other. Like, how can we? And it could be that this is something that has just started very organically, right? And it's kind of started to grow. And so, who knows, like, maybe later down the road, when it's more established, right, you start to see maybe some of those kinds of things that these other women have maybe told me about before. But I think, like, right now, like, in at least in my experience, every group that I've had, the kind of pleasure of being a part of their group, it's just been fantastic. I've just felt like I've learned and I've met really great people, and it's helped me in my career in recruitment, and to be a better recruiter, and to obviously be more informed with, and if I'm more informed, I can provide better service to my clients and better service to my candidates. And same thing for everyone else that comes from different areas of that, the group. Okay.
I just wanted to add something else, which is that I think that specifically in the area of impact investing, you also have shared values, which is something that helps create that community and have that kind of girls' friendship as well. Because when you're in impact, you already have some certain kind of values that are far more than just a professional objective. So I think that's also part of the thing, and the thing that gets people together.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct, and it's they're very different values than, like, in private equity, like the value. I mean, we're not getting into culture of, like, the firms and, like, the values of the firms, but I mean, in private equity, for example, there's more of a focus on, like, returns and performance, and not necessarily, these elements of impact and community, and and how to kind of make the world and that's
a better place,
a better place. That's not necessarily that. I mean, that could maybe be part of, a firm's purpose, but it's first and foremost, it's going to be, to the LPs and to the returns, right? For those that maybe, I have a large audience of younger, early career folks. So, like when we talk about that, actually, do you feel, because I think that there's this perception that if it's impact investing, if it's ESG, you're putting that ahead of returns. Do you think that is 100% true, or do you think that there's a little bit of
I don't think that is the case. The reality is that both have to be there.
Right.
Like, you cannot make impact without returns, and you do not want only returns because if not, you're not an impact investing firm. So I believe that both of them have to be taken into account. We do that at our due diligences, and we analyze any of the entities we want to invest in. And in fact, we've had to say no to some of them because of both reasons. Ones that had a very good impact but couldn't give the return that we were looking for the investors, or the other way around. Others that had a very a big potential in terms of returns, but couldn't offer the impact we were searching for. So I think that it's a combination that we have both as an objective, at least on our.
Okay. No, but I think that that's a really important point, because I think there can sometimes be that very skewed perception that, like, okay, well, what kind of returns, and are they, is there really a focus on returns? Because there's a lot of talk about, like when you hear impact, the first thing that you think of, you don't necessarily think about like the returns to LPs, right? Like you don't.
I mean, it's true that it's lower return that everyone knows that when you're focused on this kind of sectors, the returns are lower than usual private equity. But that doesn't mean that you do not focus on having those returns. You know that returns are lower, but you do have to comply with them.
Like when you're looking, like, what is the average that you would say?
Well, I could not talk about average because it depends on the type of portfolios that you have. For example, in our case, most of the investments are done through debt. So debt usually gives less returns than equity investments. And so in our case, most of our funds have 70% investments in debt, through debt, and the 30% on equity determines most part of the return. Even in our own funds, the ranges of returns are different because the focus is different. So it's kind of difficult to give you a range itself, but if you can think about the type of funds that we have, between 6 to 10% is quite a usual range. But then if you have a private equity fund, which is only 100% private equity, returns are, they're two biggest. So it's nothing comparable. But one thing I think is super important to know, and for people who are learning about this, this is just a personal point of view, but I feel that in our sector and in general in finance, we tend to think like you have to give up returns to get impact of the other way around. But the reality is that if we think, it's like when you think about stakeholders rather than only shareholders. I think that if you take it as a whole, holistically, both are contributing. So the return in general, if you add impact return and financial return, might be higher than only a financial return, because you're impacting a community. You can impact also environmentally speaking. And if you think in a long term, as a society, you might think that the return as a whole, holistically speaking, is even higher. But this is something that it has to be taught. I think this is something that we're on a capitalistic society that thinks only about the financial return. But if you start to think about all that shapes the return, it might be even bigger.
Yeah, no, you're right. The trickle down effect, right? We don't think about that. You're right. We think about like just, like what, okay, when we exit, when we, right? Like, that's kind of where the focus is. And you're right. The impact, the broader impact and the longer term impact is really what, could really in theory generate, generate different returns, greater returns, but in a very different way of thinking of them. I like that. I like that point because I think that's a really important part to kind of point out. And I like that, you kind of say like, you don't necessarily you don't have to compromise returns for impact, right? Like they can mutually, exist together. And as we know in life is just a balancing act, right? Like you can't have.
Really? I mean, you think about compromising financial returns. Investors talk about it. It's like what they're asking for is a return, financial return, obviously. But if they learn about what's behind this, and they believe in it, they're gonna want to have that. So this is something that I think the society in general needs to go forward, and the new generations are demonstrating that they're more interested in contributing to the world in general, and I think this is part of the way things should go forward. Mm-hmm. Even friends from my community, impact community, sometimes say like this should be the standard. Like, why do we think about impact investing or ESG, but in our case, impact investing, like separated from the investment industry? This in the future should be part of the system itself. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just a matter of time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope that is a correct projection.
I hope so.
I hope that is. All right.
You have to be faithful.
Yes. No, 100%. I mean, if you're working in this space, you clearly have faith, right? Yeah. If you're working in impact investing, I think you need to have that, right? Yeah. If you're working in any of these, in the impact just world, right? Okay. So just to start wrapping up, if there's anything that you would like the audience to take away from this conversation, what would it be?
Oh, it's a difficult question. We've talked about so many things, but if to make it short, I guess that we talked about the risk return impact figure. I mean, what's the name in English? Like model, yeah, which is something I think they should investigate about, and it's super interesting. And I think the power of community. That's something that we have to make the professional landscape take into account this community as a value. I think it makes like the future a better place.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. And if someone is interested in the Women in Impact Investing and is in Spain, or not necessarily in Spain, right? Like you can reach out to me or to you if they want more information on how to connect with anyone in the group, right?
Yeah, sure. I would be definitely open to speak to whoever is interested, and we're also, I mean, it's still we're still working on it, so it's not really formalized. Mm-hmm. We do not have a web page or a LinkedIn site, but we're working on it. So maybe in the future we can even.
So like more of a secret society right now. Let's keep the intrigue and the allure going. But all right, well, Maria, thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure to have you on Take the Stage. You're welcome anytime. And I hope you come back again.
Well, I hope to come back too.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to Take the Stage. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To hear past shows, please go to our website, career-rockstars.com. If you are a company or candidate who would like to work with Career Rockstars, reach out on LinkedIn or send an email to Alexis at career-rockstars.com. Thanks again, and until next time.